Welcome to the Pet Loss Companion. I'm Ken Dolan-Del Vecchio, and I'm here with my friend and co-author Nancy Saxton-Lopez. And this is a program that we do every Thursday from 6 to about 6:30 Eastern Time. And it is a program that grew out of the book that we wrote that's called The Pet Loss Companion, Healing Advice from Family Therapists Who Lead Pet Loss Groups. And this program allows us to have a dialogue with the audience. So what we do a lot of the time, we're going to be doing it today, is we read letters that you have sent to us and we give some commentary on them. And you can reach me at kenddv@gmail.com, and you can reach Nancy at nsaxtonlopez at csmpc.com. And if you write to us and you tell us we can share what you wrote, we will probably share it on this program. We will probably also share it on our Substack, where we share the written text that people send us and the beautiful pictures they send, and then our responses as well. And the Substack is one of the ways that you can give some support to the work that we're doing, because it has a small subscriber fee. It's $5 a month or $50 a year. And that's all of the information that I'm sharing right now is in the description that is attached to the program. So that's one of the ways that you can support us. You can also give a donation through Venmo or PayPal. And while I say this, we also want you to know that we don't expect you to give us money, but if you do, we will be grateful.
We would
because
appreciate it.
because we do this really as a service to the community. And this program is a friend of Dakin Humane Society in Springfield, Massachusetts. Dakin is a full service resource in terms of being a shelter for animals and an adoption center. They also do other things that are directed towards helping the human animal bond. One of them is a pet loss support group on Zoom that I facilitate every month, the second Tuesday of the month, from 6 p.m. Eastern to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And there's an RSVP link in the description, and you can join this program from anywhere in the country and anywhere in the world. And people do, and it's an interesting mix of perspectives and experiences when people come together from so many different places. And so if you would like to join that meeting, please sign up on the RSVP link. And if you discover after you RSVP that you really can't make it, please send me a note to let me know that you can't make it, because we will reopen the limited registration that we have. Please consider subscribing on YouTube if you haven't already, because this is a way that the algorithm knows that the program is valuable to people and makes it more accessible to those who are seeking support with pet loss. And also, if you make a comment or you put a thumbs up, that also helps. And finally, we would like you to know that we have an affiliate relationship with a company called Bereaved that makes these really beautifully crafted granite plaques. And these are the kind of thing that you could use as a grave marker or keep with your mementos inside or in a garden, a memorial garden. And if you purchase a plaque through the link on our site, and only if you purchase it through the link on our site, we will then get a little bit of a kickback
Mhm.
that supports the program too. And so here is Nancy with the
Where's
bereaved.
Bailey?
And I have one more comment to make, and that is that the schedule is going to be a little rocky for the next couple of weeks, because I'll be in Germany. And the reason I'll be in Germany is this little person who
Oh, little villain.
this is my little baby grandson, who is 2 weeks old. He was 2 weeks old on Tuesday. And so I'll be traveling there. My husband and I are traveling to Germany, and we'll visit them for a couple of weeks. But we've recorded a couple
Yep.
programs, which I'm going to do my best to get out in the out. They'll be out tomorrow, either set up to show the next couple of
Yes.
days, or maybe if I can figure out how to do it, the following Thursday and the Thursday after that.
Mhm.
Nancy, want to get us started for today?
Yes, of course. We have two stories tonight, and I'm going to read Nadia's story about her beautiful Harlow. That's a great name. And Ken's going to read a story that Sarah sent about her Smidge. And these are also wonderful stories. We glad and thank you for sending stories in, because I think it helps everyone who's listening, and it also helps people that are listening to maybe share their stories also. Dear Ken and Nancy, I stumbled across your podcast in early October, and for some reason I found some comfort hearing the stories of other grieving pet parents. It helps me to realize I'm not alone. I find myself hearing their feelings of regret and guilt and thinking how they shouldn't feel that way. They are all clearly amazing people that gave their pets the best life. They do not deserve to beat themselves up, but I cannot seem to apply that same kindness to myself. I felt I should share my story in case someone has had a similar situation and it helps them in any way. June 26, 2024 was the worst day of my life, and since then I have been struggling with great grief and guilt from losing my beloved cat Harlow. That day I watched my Harlow suffer in pain because of selfish decisions I made trying to keep him with me when I should have let him go. He was 14 years old. Harlow was my foster fail. He was so friendly and loving that I fell in love with him quickly and adopted him from the rescue where I was fostering him from in the fall of 2015. I had cats all my life, but never had a cat like Harlow. He loved people and he was so social. He would follow me everywhere, and we had a special connection. One of my favorite things he did was lie down with me and knead me. I love that. With his big fluffy paws while purring. I could really feel his love. Although I wanted him to be an indoor cat, he had a taste of going outdoors from his previous life, and I made a deal with him. He can go out, but I'm coming with him. We would roam the neighborhood, walking side by side, sometimes fighting as I prevented him from taking off into people's backyards where I could not follow. Everyone knew us and loved how could share this special experience of daily walks together. Once the pandemic hit, I was now working from home every day. This would be a permanent arrangement that he loved, and he milked the extra time getting treats and more outdoor time. For me, battling a cat invading my laptop and video meetings was both frustrating and a joy at the same time. I dare not try to and move his big paw from my laptop unless I wanted it swatted. I know all he wanted was my attention after all. When I was fostering him, the rescue said he needed surgery for bladder stones, so I took him to have them removed from the vet they use. Results came back that these were the type of stones that meant he was born a producer of these and would need to be on a special urinary diet for the rest of his life. This diet is meant to prevent stones from forming, and I made sure I only fed him this diet both during the foster period and after when I adopted him. He was a healthy, happy boy, and our life together was my everything. Then in December 2020, I noticed something was wrong. He was not eating, and he looked very weak. It was a Friday night, and for the first time, he did not come to bed with us. I couldn't sleep all night, and I called a few emergency veterinary hospitals and took him in at 7 a.m. Saturday. They said his kidney values were so high and he was an acute renal failure. They admitted him and put him on fluids and antibiotics to bring down those values while they looked for the root cause. It turned out he had formed stones once again, this time in his ureters. These are the thin vein-like structures that take the urine from the kidney to the bladder. After a few days of fluid therapy, the stones would not budge. I was told these uterus and a cat are so thin that it's hard for them to pass, and the only option is the surgery called a subcutaneous ureteral bypass, where they would use catheters and tubes to connect the kidneys to the bladder so urine could pass down. They admitted that they did not have a surgeon experienced in this, as it was rarely done. So they called another veterinary ER, and there was a surgeon who had done this 3 times. I consulted with her, and she told me he may not make it out of surgery, and that if he did, she could not tell me how long he could live, and that he would need routine flushes every 3 months for the rest of his life to maintain this system. The surgery came with a hefty financial cost and maintenance, but I knew I could not let him go, and so I decided to take the chance to save his life. I was under extreme stress during this time, hoping for him to make it through and those kidney values to come down. They told me the surgery was a success. His kidney values greatly improved, and he came home to me. We spent 1 week in a locked room with all furniture removed except an inflatable mattress because he was to be contained in an area where he could not jump or be active as he had a huge incision on his belly. I gave him medication every 8 hours and stayed by his side until the stitches were removed. Harlow healed, and we had the best Christmas ever. Such a gift for him to still be there with us. He loves sitting under the Christmas tree each year, and this year was extra special. This ordeal brought us closer than ever. I was his caregiver, best friend, and I could tell he knew that we had fought for him. We complied with the routine maintenance of a subsystem, taking him every 3 months to be flushed. It broke my heart because he hated going, but I knew it was for the best. He had some complications from the surgery because of the foreign materials in his bladder causing inflammation. Few months post-op, he started to urinate outside his box, and many times it contained blood. As removing the sub was not an option, he was managed medically uh, twice daily for the rest of his life. I was happy he had more good days than bad, and the pain was not constant. He loved a second chance at life, and we continued our routine of taking walks, playing with toys, and invading laptops. I found myself spoiling him even more because I knew his health was compromised and that the subsystem can be prone to issues and that he could die at any time. Despite the fears, life was good once again, and managing his health became a normal part of our everyday. Then, in mid June of this year, a few weeks after one of the routine flushes, he did not seem well. He was lethargic and sleeping a lot more than usual. I thought he was not well since he came into contact with a neighbor's cat recently, and it perhaps had something to do with it. I thought about taking him to the vet, but I did not want to cause him yet another dreaded trip, so I didn't. Unfortunately, it did not pass, and then all of a sudden I noticed him straining to urinate. I rushed him to the vet, who ran tests and found he was blocked because he had a lot of sediment in his bladder that apparently had built up in the subsystem and must have been flushed out into his already inflamed bladder during the last visit. His kidney values were also showing once again acute renal failure. They said that based on what they saw, that they could try and unblock him, but the only way to get the sediment out was surgery, which was not in his best interest, and I agreed. I could not put him through that again. They also said that if he did unblock, he would ultimately block again. They just cannot say if it would be days or weeks. I was left with the decision to put him down that day or give him a chance of a few extra days to say goodbye. I made the selfish and wrong choice to admit him for 2 days to see if he could be unblocked. He cried as I left him there, not because of pain, but he was begging for me to take him home. Sadly, his kidney values never came down, and once they removed his urinary catheter, he blocked right away. I was devastated, and it felt so cruel for making him endure 2 days in the hospital only for it to fail. I asked to put him down at home because I knew he'd be more comfortable in his favorite surroundings. I took him home, and on the way, he was so sick that he collapsed in his carrier. Uh, to this day, I'm not sure how I witnessed what I did and made it home. I called a mobile vet on the way to meet me ASAP. I did not want him to suffer any longer. We got home, and the vet was there within minutes, just enough time for Harlow to have one last meal. My husband had run out while I was coming home to get fancy feasts, something we would never give him normally. He lapped it up and ate the entire can. Then he went to our bed and laid down. The vet arrived and we said our goodbyes so quickly. It was not the way he deserved to go. It was not the way I had imagined. I could not believe the dreaded day came out of nowhere and he was gone forever, just like that. Since that day, I felt nothing but guilt. I should have put him down instead of admitting him and spared him the 2 days of suffering. I miss him so much. My life will never be the same. Not a single day has gone by since that I do not cry and tell him how much I love him. The house is quiet and everything feels empty and lifeless. I cannot imagine this Christmas without him sitting under the tree. I'm a broken person who now lives in the past as the present is torture, and I care not for the future. I am so sorry, my dear Harlow, for letting you down, for being too weak to let you go when I should have. I will never forgive myself. I miss you so much. Thank you, Ken and Nancy, for giving me this platform to share his story. So, the guilt.
It's, I mean, massive amount of guilt
Mhm.
after so much care and
Yeah.
so much careful attention. And she did what she and her husband and the vets thought might help. She made a judgment,
Hmm.
and now she's flooded with guilt. And I hope the guilt has lessened
Hated.
some, because the way that I see this, she doesn't have any. There's no, there's no real reason when you look at it objectively for her to feel guilty at all. But of course, that doesn't really matter
No,
because,
we all, yeah.
yeah, this is
Guilt
this is
is
just the
is
way.
is what happens.
But I mean, here we have somebody who had this very extreme regimen of care
Right.
for their cat and followed through with it for a few years, like 4 years, because I think she had the surgery in 2020, if I remember.
Okay.
And, you can't do better for your animal than what Nadia did for Harlow. I mean, you just can't. And yet, here we see
Yeah.
this pattern where there's just so much guilt. And it's very typical, because when people are this conscientious, they take
Yeah.
responsibility to an extreme level where, like, you can't be responsible for life and death, which is just way outside our control. And but that she reports being so flooded with guilt is just, I'm sorry that's the case,
Yeah.
because the way I look at it, she was the absolute heroine in this cat's life. She went above and beyond so much
Because there were things from the beginning, right?
right from
He
the
they
beginning.
found that he had stones right in the beginning of her foster field with him, right? She
And she
adopted.
had this surgery that is
Mhm.
very, very rare, it
Yeah.
sounds
Sounds
like. And I'm sure it was very costly. And then this treatment every 3 months.
yeah.
And then she made a judgment
Flushing
that she didn't think. I mean, she was always putting her cat's best interest first,
before
always,
hers. Mhm.
always. And
Mhm.
so I really hope that she finds a way to not
Yeah.
be so hard
So
on
more,
herself.
yeah. Well, that's what she said at the beginning, right? I can understand others and I'm there, but I can't give that to myself, right?
Which is so typical. And
Yeah.
that's the task, really, is to think, if somebody else told you this story, would you be pounding them with guilt? No, not
No.
at all. Not at all. You wouldn't be. You'd be saying that they were an absolute champion for their cat and had done everything possible and then some.
Don't you find though, the more conscientious, the more you're involved and enmeshed and taking care of your companion to the nth degree, the more guilt
It
we
seems
have.
to be that way. It really
Yeah,
does seem to, and
a
it's
lot of
so
the stories.
unfortunate, because it's like these are people who don't deserve that guilt
Yeah,
at all. So we
I'm
want to thank
yes,
Nadia
Dottie.
for this story,
Mhm.
and she did the best she
You
possibly.
did. You're a good mom, really
Harlow
good.
was very fortunate indeed to land in her care.
That's right.
so, so now we're going to share Sarah's story, and I'm going to try to show some pictures because there's a lot of them. Let's see.
Oh, look
This is
at
Smidge.
that.
This is Smidge.
Look, he's just so cute. Look at him.
He's under the crib there. He's with the baby. So she writes, "Hello, Mr. Ken. My name is Sarah, and I've just listened to episode 91 of your pet loss podcast. My dog was struck by a car on Wednesday, and it was all my fault. My family and I were out for a walk, and I had my dog off leash. He was 1 year old, and I knew he had bad recall, and I knew we were a little close to the road, but I thought it would be fine.
Mm,
He spotted a bird on the grassy median while my back was turned. My 2 year old nephew had a call out to me to watch him do something, and he started to chase it, following into the road where he was hit by a car.
mm,
I don't blame the driver. He stopped and said how sorry he was, and it wasn't his fault at all. I feel truly awful because it no matter what anyone says, it was my fault. I knew he had bad recall and didn't see cars as a threat, and I knew we were close to the road, and I just put him back on the leash before that spot. He'd still be there. He was just a baby, a little over 1 year old, and we haven't even had him for a full year. He was so happy to be here and loved everyone, especially babies and toddlers. My nephew doesn't even understand he's not coming home, and all I could do is feel grateful he didn't actually see the dog getting hit by a car, unlike the rest of us. How do I cope with this? I can't even sleep in the room we stayed in because he slept with me every night. My dad keeps trying to tell me he hated the leash, but he didn't. He just hated how slow he'd walk. Feel free to share if you'd like. Sincerely, Sarah. And then Sarah wrote, very shortly thereafter, she wrote again, Dear Ken, a few more days, and after listening to a few more episodes, I figured I'd give more context. We adopted our dog, Smidge, when he was a few months old from the Humane Society last year. He was our first mutt, as we'd gotten rat terriers in the past. Well, my younger sister and mom picked out the dog without telling our dad. He was a surprise Christmas gift a few months after the death of our last dog. He quickly became my dog. I walked him every day and trained him and helped him make doggy friends, and he slept with me every night when my younger sister wasn't at home. She's at college. While a bit shy at first, it was very clear from the get-go that Smidge loved to be here. He was happy doing whatever, chilling on the couch, going for a run, staying at the beach. When I was a lot more road careful at our While I was a lot more road careful at our previous house, we moved over the summer right across from a park where at least half of the dog walkers go off leash. It was clear to me that Smidge had bad recall, and I was doing everything I could to correct it so he could play with the off-leash dogs. I had a special recall word and even had a remote so I could buzz him when he got too far. He was getting really good at it, but Smidge had three things that got him to forget his recall: dogs, children he could go run with, and birds. He loved to chase birds, and in the end was getting so good at hunting them. We didn't know at first, but Smidge loved kids. He adored my 2-year-old nephew and was happy to have my sister's kids visit for the holiday. He would check on the infant whenever she made a sound or would herd my nephew away from the gate. His favorite thing was running alongside my nephew, the two of them, excuse me, chasing pigeons in the park. On Wednesday, November 20th, we had gone for a walk with a whole family, and I was so proud to show off how good Smidge had gotten off leash. The park we were at narrows at one part, connecting to a road that at times can be empty and at times can have people going too fast. While walking back to the house, after about 45 minutes with no problems, my nephew called my name and I turned around to see what trick he was doing. While my back was turned only for a second, Smidge spotted a bird and chased it into the street where he was struck and killed. I managed to get to him for his last breaths, but I don't think I'll ever forget his eyes. He looked like he was so confused and didn't understand what had just happened. He passed in my arms, and after removing him from the road, I sat with him for a bit with my dad. We took him to the vet, and we're going to scatter his ashes along the beach and by the tree where he loved to chase pigeons. I still don't blame the driver. He stopped and said how sorry he was, and I hope he knows it really wasn't his fault, even if I wish he'd been going so much slower. Everyone in my family has been super kind. I think we're all blaming ourselves for not doing something sooner. His death has been so hard because, unlike our other pets, how can this be his time when if I had been better about keeping him on the leash while near the road, he'd still be here? He was just a baby. How can I go running again without my running buddy? I wake up and think it's time to let Smidge out. We get home and I think the same thing. Everyone in the family has been telling me it's not my fault, but it was. I had even gotten a bad feeling before we got to that stretch of road and thought maybe I should put him back on the leash, but I didn't listen to it, and now he's gone. My nephew has only brought up Smidge once, and it was when I was crying, and he told me it was okay and that Smidge was going to be okay. And all he knows is that Smidge went to the vet and won't be home for a long time. I still haven't managed to look at any pictures or sleep with the same blanket I had when Smidge slept with me. He was so cute and sweet, and I miss him so much. We're going to make a little take a toy, leave a toy spot by the beach. He loved fetching things out of the sea, even if he hated to swim, waiting at that spot just before he'd have to swim for the waves to bring to the toy to bring the toy or stick back to him. Can you give me advice on how to be kinder to myself? I've already vowed never to trust a dog around a road again. I just don't know how I can ever forgive myself for this.
Hmm. Yep. Well, this is one of those times that it is a horrific accident.
Yep. And
He had been off leash. doing his thing, playing with the other dogs, hanging out with his nephew, hanging out with the family members. And unfortunately, this happened. And of course, she would blame herself.
Well, the thing about this is that the way I see it is we want our dogs to have as much freedom
Yep.
as they can. And it's hard to begrudge them that. It's hard to keep them on the leash, particularly when there's all these other dogs that are playing and running around. But really, we all know that it's safer to have them on a leash.
Right.
But human beings, being what we are, we we make errors in judgment. We do it all the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes, most of the time, they are totally without consequence. And sometimes they are very consequential, like this.
Yes.
And one of the things that I've said to Sarah is, we do the best we can. We make errors. We've heard these stories so many times
Oh,
where,
many, many, many times.
people
Many.
sometimes even have their dog on a leash and they've got a moment of inattention and the dog is in the street and gets hit.
It takes the leash with them.
Yeah.
you know?
So life is unpredictable. Things happen that we would never anticipate. And I think she's right. The lesson here is if your dog doesn't have perfect recall, they shouldn't be off the leash. And most dogs don't have perfect recall. Some do, but we're so tempted if it's anywhere near that. If they're pretty good at it, we're tempted to sometimes give them their freedom, and
Yeah.
it's a crapshoot every time we do it.
I mean, but that's what he wanted. That's what Smidge wanted. He wanted to hang out and run. He
Yeah,
wanted to run with his pals,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And of course, you want to give him those things.
yeah. And so the 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 advice that I have for her is just don't be too hard on yourself.
Yeah.
We all make every now and then we make instantaneous errors in judgment, and most of the time we don't even notice what happens afterwards because nothing really happens. But sometimes something like this happens,
Yeah.
and that's life. And so she's learned something. And, one of the things when I heard this story, I was like, well, sometimes I let my dogs run from where I let them in the fenced in area, run in the yard to the front door because I know that they want their food.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that and the the leashes are trailing behind them. But I also know that that's a risk, and I've told myself don't do that. And so I generally don't do it. And when I hear these stories, and we've heard a lot of them recently,
Yeah. Absolutely.
they're a cautionary tale for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
So you gave Smidge a great life. It was
When you
short, but
had
it
him.
was very filled with love.
Yeah.
And we're just so sorry that this happened.
Yeah.
Take
It's
care of
heartbreaking.
yourself. Be
Yes.
gentle with
Please take
yourself.
care of yourself. You're a good person. You're a good pet parent.
Yep.
Sometimes things just happen.
Yep.
You know.
So we want to thank Sarah and Nadia for their stories.
Mhm.
And also just remind you, if you haven't subscribed and you find the program valuable, please do subscribe or leave a comment, leave a thumbs up. All of those things tell the algorithm to let the program become known to people who are looking
Mhm.
for support with pet loss.
Yeah, we'd appreciate that.
And we'll see you soon.
See you. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right. So Nancy, that